All right, I think we can go ahead and get started and hopefully some more folks will join. Um, but welcome to the City Hall Fellows Local Government Career Panel. My name is Michael Cox, and in my day job, I am a sustainability analyst at San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District, or SF-BART for short. But I also serve as the events chair on the City Hall Fellows Board. For those of you who aren't familiar with City Hall Fellows, we are a nonprofit organization aimed at growing a new pipeline of professionals in local government and fostering a network of individuals who believe local government is a valuable and meaningful place for public service. So to that end, some of the things we do are running an annual mentorship program that matches young professionals with seasoned mentors. And we also host events like this to have conversations about what work in local government entails. So we are excited to have our three panelists to share their expertise, and we will introduce them shortly. But before that, some quick housekeeping. This event is being recorded, and we will post the recording on our website once it's ready, and we'll send that out to you all. We're going to keep everyone on mute until the questions section at the end. But if you have any questions throughout or have technical issues at any point, please reach out to me via the chat or by email as needed. And after the event, we're going to be sending out a survey to get feedback. So please fill it out if you can. And with that, I will pass it over to Dennis, who is serving as our wonderful moderator this evening.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be here, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your early or late evening, depending on where you're coming from. A little bit about me real quick. I am a director with KPMG LLP's State and Local Government Solutions practice. Been doing that for about nearly 10 years. And prior to that, I myself was a government employee working for the New York State Legislature for over 4 years. It's my pleasure to be here with you and to moderate this panel, the goal of which is to kind of hear from talented mid-career practitioners of the public sector and to offer some of you advice, lessons learned for starting or continuing a successful career in the public sector. I'm just going to briefly try to introduce the panelists here before we jump into our questions. Thank you, everybody, for the input in advance of the session. So we got a lot of interest and a lot of outreach about what you wanted to hear about. But just to reiterate what Michael said, these things are kind of more interesting and informative if you guys chime in with questions throughout, or obviously save them towards the end. So with that, I'll briefly introduce and highlight our panelists here. The first, on my bottom left at least, is Ismelda, or Izzy, and she is the Executive Director of Program and Performance Management for the Division of Youth and Family Justice in the New York City Administration for Children's Services. We also are joined by Jacob Watkins. He's the Senior Manager for Mobile Unit Strategy at the New York Test and Trace Corps at the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. And last but certainly not least, Jessie Rubin, Senior Change Manager of the Alameda Health System. Thank you guys for making yourselves available. And with that, I think we will just launch right into it. And Jessie, maybe starting with you, can you tell us a little bit about what made you join the public sector?
What made me join the public sector? Thanks for that, Dennis. So it took me a while to figure out that I wanted to be a local government nerd. I took kind of a long, winding path to my current career track. I was working in international development as a Fulbright scholar in Nicaragua. Then I tried out being a paralegal for a public defense organization in San Francisco. And then I went back to international development in Panama. And finally, I realized that in all of the work that I was doing, that there are a lot of service-oriented people like myself. That's what I've always wanted to do, is something that has a service orientation to it. But a lot of mission-driven folks that don't really have a lot of management know-how, like financial literacy, things like that. So I started looking at master's programs that would get me that type of hard skills along with the soft skills. And I found the MPA, the Master's in Public Administration program, and I ended up doing that as my master's, and that's actually what led me to pursue a career in public service, and specifically local government, is from all the opportunities that I got through my master's program.
Excellent. Jacob, I'll pass it to you. What inspired you to join the public sector?
Yeah, a lot of really similar themes to Jessie, what you were saying just there. Wanted to be in service in some way. And I think why I landed in public service as opposed to a nonprofit route or similarly kind of service-oriented routes is kind of twofold. The first is impact. I think local government in particular, of all the places that I've worked, you really see what you do day by day. I mean, I think there are days when I walk down the street and I see one of my mobile vaccine clinics and I forgot it was there on that block, on that corner. You really kind of like can touch the things that you are doing. And the second is scale. You know, I spent a little time in the nonprofit world. You get to work on really fascinating things in a small, limited way in certain times, maybe sometimes larger. You get to play at the local government scale, and it's the entire city, your entire community, your entire state. You know, I get to think about the city of New York and kind of all of its various facets. So it's a really enticing kind of extra level to service.
And Izzy, lastly to you.
Yeah. So, well, was always interested in child welfare, juvenile justice, and right after college, my first full-time job was as a case planner for Siemens Society for Children and Families, and that gave me. I did that for 2 years, and that really gave me insight on nonprofit, but then the relationship with government. And so I realized I need to go back to school. I also, like Jessie, I went to school for a master's in public administration, and that kind of opened the door to understanding government and opportunities where I could kind of, land where I could understand the system a little better.
Thanks, Izzy. So, we kind of just heard from the panelists about how they got here, how they got into the public sector. I wanted to see if we could hear from the audience, or at least read from the audience, about where you guys are in your local government journey. So I see here we're mostly a West Coast crowd, but can folks take a moment and just type in, where are you working? Where are you studying? What are you studying? So we could get a sense for where you guys are in your journey. Go ahead, folks, don't be shy. Just type in, are you students? Okay, we've got a public policy person. Urban planning. San Francisco fellow, working with the Housing Authority.
Dennis, can I just say how much I love seeing all the folks working for Alameda County? I may be in New York, but my mother's live out in Alameda County, so thank you for keeping the lights on out there and keeping them busy and keeping them safe. Really, really appreciate all the San Francisco over there in Oakland. So I appreciate all of the Alameda County love on this call.
Yeah, Alameda County.
Thank you, Jessie. I appreciate it. I hope they don't need your services anytime soon, but I'm very glad that they are now.
Okay, a lot of public policy folks, and we even have some other mid-career professionals here as well, City and County of San Francisco. So excellent. So now that we've gotten to know a little bit about where you guys are, just to ask a more humanizing question to our panelists, where are you from kind of originally? Have you moved around the country? And maybe for something more recent, what is like one fun thing that you did this summer, or for those of you that didn't get a chance to have a lot of time off the summer? Jacob, I'm looking at you. What's a new hobby or activity that you picked up through COVID? So Jacob, tossing it to you.
Yeah, so I may have given it away. I'm from the Bay Area. I grew up in Oakland, California, but ended up out here about 10, 15 years ago. I should know that offhand. But ended up here a bunch of years ago and fell in love with the city and worked for the city. So I've lived in New York ever since. As Dennis alluded to, I have not unfortunately had a lot of time off in the past couple of months, but picked up Muay Thai of all the things to pick up of late. Really helps with the stress to hit something over and over and over. Not that every job in service is in any way like this, just working on COVID stuff. It's nice sometimes to hit something. Dennis, back to you.
Izzy?
So was born and raised in New York City, traveled different places, but have stayed here. Well, Albany for about four months, but came back to New York City. So I absolutely adore the Golden Girls. And so I received this recipe book on all the different dishes that they, had on the show. So I did every single dish that was in the recipe book. That's, I guess, cooking, baking, all of that.
Thank you. Jessie?
Yeah, hi. So I kind of gave it away a little bit in my first question. I've lived in lots of places internationally and also here in the US, but I'm originally from the suburbs of Sacramento, and I wanted to get as far away from the suburbs as possible when I graduated from high school. So I've been everywhere, but the Bay Area has been home now for like 7 years or 8 years. So. And then for my COVID hobby, I'm not as adventurous as Jacob or as interested as Izzy. I really like bird watching all of a sudden. I've been trying to identify all the birds in my neighborhood.
Excellent. I'd be lying if I said I didn't pick up a pair of binoculars at the start of COVID myself. All right, so a lot of the input we got in advance of the session is all about kind of preparing for a career in local government. And the next question I wanted to ask everybody, starting maybe with Izzy, is what skills or certifications are important to develop for entering a career in public service?
Yeah, well, I've always had an appreciation for project management, but throughout the years, more recently, it's been a really big part of work. So I think project management, whether you want to get the PMP or, I know there are different type of certifications, but I know the PMP is the one to have. I think that's really helpful. It even when we're looking for candidates to come, whether they're a fellow, an intern, a full-time employee, having the ability or the skill for project management is huge. So I think that's an important piece. And then, I think it's also specific to the area that you want to focus on. Being in juvenile justice, there's really depending on what you want to do. So if you're thinking about direct service, we have many MSWs, we have a lot of MPAs, and of course, there's the finance piece. But I think the certification that's pretty well-rounded is project management. So I would have to go there for that.
That really resonates with me. So yeah, I'm nodding my head a lot because I'm a PMP, and most of my career in government at this point has been as a project manager. So I also agree that there's a lot there. So thanks, Izzy. I also wanted to put a plug in for data analysis in general, just getting really comfortable with spreadsheets and knowing how to manipulate them to do magical things with them is a key It's a key skill. Also, when you are able to get your results, being able to explain your results. So being able to show a graph and explaining to people what they're looking at, I think that's a skill that that you definitely learn in grad school and along the way, but it's one that I don't hear people articulate very often, and I think it's really important. And then also just being able to speak really concisely and clearly and persuasively in all contexts. There are, in any line of work, there are lots of egos, and there are a lot of people who speak way too long. I might be one of them right now, honestly, but being able to do that will set you apart. I think that those are always the most impressive leaders.
Well, Jessie and Izzy stole both of my answers, but I could not agree more wholeheartedly with both of them. I'll give the disclaimer. I started my career in service in government at City Hall's project management office. So I think it's a great way to get into government too. Like if you're looking into an entry, it's a really fun way where you're doing project management, you're learning the mechanics, and you're seeing a bird's eye view of an agency or of an entire policy domain. The only thing additional I would add here is even kind of beyond professional certifications and for those like really entry level positions, something that I look for more than almost anything else is just experience with an office, more than an internship. But if you've had a job working at a front desk, that stands out a lot more on an internship resume or a fellow resume or an entry level resume, because it tells me, you know, you have that experience showing up on time, you know how a copier works. Like those basic things make such a big difference when you're in a resource strapped environment and you don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of time for mentoring at the very beginning. So those kind of like office skills, demonstrating that on the resume and highlighting it goes a long way.
It's like a wild card follow-up question, because we do have some folks a little bit into their careers, and because all of you have had success and continued your careers in lots of different venues, which skills, maybe some that you did mention, some didn't, do you guys think become more and more important as you progress? Like what separates future leaders from, you know, and folks just starting out? And I'll just open it up to anybody.
Can I take it? I have a thought. So I think, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, actually, Dennis, which is why I'm so eager to answer. I think that being able to protect people's time is just like so key. So what I mean by that, what that looks like is being prepared before a meeting, making sure you have all the right people in the meeting, having an agenda, being able to facilitate that meeting so that it starts on time and it ends on time, and that you actually get your objective accomplished. Not writing really long emails, being able to like be very concise with your language or highlight what it is that you need from somebody. Those types of skills of just being really respectful of people's time. I think it's just something that you don't see as much, and when you do see it, I think those people go far right away. So that's my thought on that one.
I just have to say that synthesizing information is absolutely needed. I think from the group, just looking at where people are coming from, I'm pretty sure it's a common practice, but synthesizing information. And I think that a level of transparency is also important, because then you can figure out who really needs to be in the meeting or who needs to be in this conversation, whether it's brainstorming or figuring out next steps. I think a level of transparency would probably be beneficial for everybody, and thinking about people's time.
Can I just one follow-up that I saw something the other day that really resonated with me? It was a meme that said canceling meetings is a random act of kindness. I just want to make sure, if you don't remember anything else from this event, can you remember that? Because I think that's so important.
All right. Jacob, anything to add? We can move on.
Once again, Izzy and Jessie stealing the two top ideas I had. I could not agree more wholeheartedly with what they said.
Well, so I'll start with you for this next question in that case. And you started getting into a little bit of this, but we had a lot of input kind of saying that folks have had a hard time applying to different positions. They're not hearing back. Sometimes they receive a rejection and they don't know why. What is some advice you would offer for breaking into the field of local government? What are some techniques or resources or approaches that you would offer, Jacob?
Yeah, I'll start. There's kind of two answers to that jump to mind. The first is less about how to break in, but more how to deal with that situation. I know, I imagine you've heard this 1,000 times. Don't take it personally. I think I applied to 100 city jobs before I got one, and I'm so glad that I did. But like, we get so many applications for a lot of these jobs, and sometimes the budget changes and the fiscal year turns over and you have to restart, and there's 14 really awful reasons why we didn't respond to that amazing candidate. So never take it personal. But in terms of like actually breaking in and not just the difficulty of breaking in, I think these kinds of conversations make a big difference, because it's always helpful to, I'm always looking for resumes, not just for my team. I'm looking for resumes across the board. The people that you meet will meet each other, right? Like, I think the first time, Izzy, that you and I met was probably across the table from each other at ACS like 4 or 5 years ago for a Raise the Age meeting. And if I ever am in trouble and I need something from ACS, or if I have someone who I think is interested in ACS, I'm going to send it to Izzy, or I'm going to send it to Dennis, or one of the other people I met over there. So continuing to go to these kinds of conversations and just putting yourself out there a little bit, always helpful to know that someone's interested, because there may not be a job now, but 6 months from now, there might be a job that's interesting. And, oh, I know somebody, I might as well forward it over, right? That's zero energy from my end, and it could make a difference.
Izzy?
Yes. And well, I also want to add that recently, OMB, the budget, COVID, that has also been a really big obstacle, not getting jobs or positions approved. So, the hiring freeze. There are, positions that are provisional or they're appointed, so that works a little different. But, someone, mentor from when I worked at the state at OCFS, the Office of Children and Family Services, said, just take tests. Take whatever exams you can, just take them, because there might be a position that you really want, and it's only if it's in a certified, civil service title. And so just take as many tests as you can, because that doesn't mean you have to, your work could look very different from what that civil service title description is. So I would say definitely take tests. Just like Jacob said, don't take it personally. It's just so much going on. But I think that still sending that email out to say, hey, just checking in once again on this really, really does help, because then that's a point of contact now for some other time if something else comes up, or if OMB opens up, that you have an opportunity there.
I like that, staying fresh in people's memories for when opportunities do rise. Jessie, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I'll say how I did it, because I actually got my MPA on the East Coast, and then didn't have a network when I moved out to San Francisco Bay Area. So here's how I did it. So I applied for the International County and City Manager Association's Management Fellowship, I believe is what it's called. So I would thank you, whoever just put that acronym there. Thank you, Dennis. That's a really good one to look into if you're not in San Francisco and doing the City Hall Fellows program, because that's nationwide. And I did that in Hayward, California, for the city of Hayward. And so that was a really good in. Another thing that I did was informational interviews with so many people. People love it when you reach out to them for an informational interview, even if there's a job, even if there isn't a job on the line, or if there is. Nobody doesn't like talking about their experience and if they can be helpful. Everybody likes that. So don't be shy about it. Definitely reach out to people. I talked to lots of people. I got soft introductions to people through friends who knew me, to so that they might have a little bit more of an incentive to talk to me if they knew the person that was introducing me and thought they were a quality human being, etc. I use LinkedIn a lot for that. So if there was a job and I saw that I knew somebody who was connected to that organization, I would ask them to do a soft introduction for me, so that I could then talk to somebody for an informational interview. So those are the types of things I would recommend. I still do the LinkedIn technique to this day, by the way. So
I would just add that I started with the state as an Excelsior Service Fellow. So that's very particular to New York. And I was part of the first, the first cohort, but I guess I can put it in the chat.
Excellent. Some established programs and some just kind of one-on-one networking and, you know, the human touch. So assuming you did break into local government as you all did, we had some questions around sort of what are the early career mistakes that you may have made, or what is just something that you wish you had started doing sooner in your career? And Izzy, if okay, we'll start with you on this one.
I think just working or having more experience with data analytics or just data, that really would have been helpful. I had some, work with evaluation, but just data, I think that would have been a really good skill, hard skill to have. I think that's where I'm leaning towards. Yeah.
Invest in data skills sooner, right?
Yeah.
Jacob?
Mine actually really dovetails into what Jessie was saying about being concise and brevity and kind of respecting the time of the people you're working with and also the people that you are reporting to. I think early career, a lot of people make this mistake. I certainly made this mistake of, you've sent me off to do a task or to look into a thing. I want to do it right. And I'm coming back with the answer and the full paragraph as to how I got to that answer because I want to prove that I did it right and you can check me if I'm wrong. They don't need that, right? They just need the answer. And if they have a question, they're going to follow up, but they're only going to follow up if they trust the answer, right? So just kind of stepping back and putting yourself in the position of what does this person who probably only has 10 minutes need to know and how much do they care? And they're a smart person and they're going to ask me a follow-up question if they need it. That certainly a mistake I made early on. It's still easy to make today. But to Jessie's point, such a big difference in how it's received by an executive that you're working for or a legislator that you're speaking out to.
Yeah, I mean, follow up to that, Jacob, like something that that I have taken some trainings on and just have been thinking about a lot lately is this idea of bottom lining as much as possible when you're speaking. So, or speaking or writing an email or doing any type of communication or a report or whatever, having the bottom line up front. And then, like you're saying, Jacob, you don't have to get into the weeds. They don't need to know how the sausage was made a lot of times. And even if they do, make sure that you put in what the bottom line is first or highlighting it somehow so that if they really want to know more, they can go deeper to look more. But that doesn't happen as much as you would think that it should. And it really does highlight that you are thinking through how you're going to be received. And I think that a lot of people really appreciate that.
Thank you, guys. Some great advice that you can start applying early on in your career. So switching gears a little bit, there's few things in our lives that the COVID pandemic hasn't touched. All of you are, affected by it and the organizations that you serve. How has COVID-19 impacted your current organization? And is there anything you are particularly proud of or want to celebrate about your organization's role over the last 18 months? Jacob?
That was a bit of a layup there, Dennis. My organization didn't exist before the pandemic. My organization is about a $2 billion enterprise that was created about a month and a half after the first surge in the city of New York to be the city's kind of comprehensive COVID response agency. Not an agency, we're in the public hospital system, but essentially operates as an agency. So of the many things that my agency does, we do all of the testing. There is free testing throughout the city, both PCR and rapid and all the various types within. There is testing in the schools. There is testing in Izzy's juvenile centers. There is testing everywhere. It is one of those things that when I talk to family back on the West Coast, I'm always amazed that it's hard to find a test, or there were times when it was hard to find a test. It is ubiquitous in the city of New York. And so I think that is a really impressive thing that the city's done. I was happy to be involved in it. And we also do a significant portion of the city's vaccination work. And we do all of that in kind of brick and mortar sites, but something that the city has done that we've been lucky to be able to do that a lot of other places haven't had the capacity to do is to do mobile testing and mobile vaccination. So instead of build a clinic or take your hospital and build a clinic at your hospital and kind of open those doors and existing avenues, it's literally go out and set up a tent and set up that clinic in all of the places that we know are historically disadvantaged or do not have the resources or do not have the healthcare infrastructure. So that was a long-winded answer, Dennis. How has my job changed? This job didn't exist before. And then, one of my proud, I think, that the city of New York has made an effort to put things on wheels and just go to where people are. We do vaccination clinics at houses of worship. We do them on miscellaneous street corners because our organization told us a lot of day laborers will spend time at that intersection. Great, let's go set up a clinic there. We'll set it up at really anything that you can imagine. We're doing a tribute to Biz Marquee next week, right? Like we're at concerts, we're everywhere that people are. And that's a very unique approach.
Cool. I'll look for my ticket later. And then Izzy, by the rules of presidential debate, Jacob referenced you. So would you like to provide your response next?
Yeah, congregate care. It needs to remain open. It needs to remain, operations need to keep going, right? People need to come in. You can't telework at secure detention facilities. So definitely proud of the fact that, we were able to provide the staff with the PPE that they needed, and making sure that it will, we were tracking it. Dennis, you were a part of that. This, especially in the very beginning. So that's an accomplishment. So in thinking of operations and trying to keep staff safe as well, and thinking about their needs and their families, a lot of different policies, procedures needed to change. And so, the team made it happen. So I think that that's really a big accomplishment. And working with our partners, again, it was a team effort. But the fact that DYFJ and our youth specialists and our special officers were there every day, doing triples even on their shifts. It was a big deal. So I just have to say that at least I was part of the tracking and submitting orders for PPE. I was part of that, but really it was the work that the facility staff did that's really a big accomplishment. So congregate care was a big thing.
Thank you. Keeping the lights on, keeping the services running. Jacob allowing us to get back to some semblance of normality sometime soon, hopefully. And Jessie?
Yeah, well, so as you can imagine, things are a little chaotic in healthcare right now, and have been. And spoiler, also, I joined Alameda Health System at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it was a really interesting time to go into healthcare. I came from the city and county of San Francisco, which is where I've spent most of my career. So it's really chaotic. I'm not gonna lie, COVID has thrown a wrench into many, many things. And there's been a lot of building the plane as we fly it, which anyone who's been in government at all knows happens a lot, but it's happened a lot more during COVID. I think that what I'm proud of is what we've been able to accomplish in the face of the challenge. Site in an area in Oakland that really needed more testing availability, and we were able to get that off the ground with partnership with the county of Alameda and other funders. And just standing up all these pop-up vaccination sites as well, and being able to be on site and putting shots in people's arms, not me personally, but you know what I mean, like helping to make with that effort. It's really fulfilling.
Serving the underserved and the vulnerable.
Yep, exactly.
thank you, and I just want to say thank you, all of you guys, for what you've been doing, and, all the folks listening. Where there's a crisis, there's a need. So there are, opportunities for talented, passionate folks here, as you can hear. So with that, we've kind of spent about a half hour going through some of the questions that we had gotten in advance. I didn't really see any questions in the chat, but now is kind of a good opportunity to either put some there or unmute yourself and ask any kind of follow-up questions that you have for our panelists here. And I think I see a raised hand from Kate.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining on this call. Really appreciate it. Love listening to all of your experiences and your stories. I have a question about how to get started in searching for local government roles. Do you suggest starting with a specific city or a specific state in mind, or do you think it would be more effective to look more at the sector or the department that you want to start in, and then kind of go that route? Do you have any advice?
I would just quickly say, if you have a city or a state that you want to live in, like, that's a great place to start, right? Like, I in large part ended up working for the city of New York because I love the city of New York. It's like, how can I make my dweeby fascination with all the sidewalk shed and the weird stuff that's going on? How can I make money off of that? And like, here we are. But Kate, I think more broadly to your question, what at least in my experience, and Izzy, I know you know the civil service system much better than I do, it's really confusing and the titles don't make a lot of sense, or at least they don't from first glance. And so finding a person on LinkedIn who has a job that seems interesting to you and then just straight up asking them oftentimes will save you so much grief, or at least it saved me a lot of grief when I was job hunting. My job title, I actually don't even know what my job title is right now because it's changed. And previous job titles I've had, there's no way I would have known to think and link that to the role that I'm currently in without having some pre-existing knowledge. And it can be kind of a gatekeeping or a barrier to entry that I think everyone wants to help you overcome. And so just asking someone who you think is interested in a kind of department or loosely in a policy domain will go a long way.
I just want to say that I agree, because again, you can have a civil service title, for example, that it's completely different from what you actually do. And, in a government, you may have a civil service title, and then your functional title is how you introduce yourself. So, and then that is really what your functional title is, what's really telling folks what you do in wherever, whatever agency division you land in. So I would just also say, again, if you know the state that you want to live in, like for example, with the Excelsior Service Fellowship, it was to be relocated in Albany. So I did move to Albany, but I was there for 4 months before I had asked, can I come back to New York City? And it just worked out, and I landed at the at the Office of Children and Family Services. Again, it's OCFS, but they have offices in New York City, and so I was able to come back to New York City. So if you do think about the state, I don't know how other states do it, but you usually go to the capital, but they do have our borough offices. And then if you think about it also, like where do you want to be? So for example, ACS, our oversight is the state. So it was a very different experience working with the state than it is with the city. We have so many more regulations. They're telling us what to do. They're giving us a budget. So you may want to start thinking about that sort of thing. So you can kind of figure out, do we want to like really go towards state? Do I really want to be in city? And then you can do a lot of research and definitely reach out to people who are already in the field or in an agency, so you can understand what title they're in and how they got to where they got, because it's kind of, it's just a journey and it's different for everybody.
Yeah, I really echo the advice that's been given thus far. I think that what I would add is if you are not sure about exactly which department you want to work for or exactly which role you want, because it can be kind of ambiguous just reading job descriptions online and the vision statements of departments, I would suggest looking for positions that give you a bit of more of a bird's eye view of government so that you can see what's happening from the top a bit more and see, and then you can kind of dabble a little bit and get your, dip your toe into different areas and see if it looks like it would be a good fit for you. And then you can, track yourself in that direction. So for instance, I know that budget analyst positions are really great for that because they really do give you, if you're in the mayor's budget office, you're seeing everything. And then also, I would say the job that I had for a very long time in San Francisco, I was there for, I think, 6.5 years, was I worked at the controller's office in the city services auditor, the city performance unit. I think that there's somebody on this call that's working there now, actually. And I wanted to say that was also a really great forum to do that because the controller's office also sees all of government, and in our office in particular was doing projects all across government with all different departments and in the intersection of different departments. And, so that's, and so analyst positions, budget analyst positions, anything that gives you kind of a bird's eye view. If you're not super sure about what you want to do, that's my main advice.
Thanks, Kate, any follow-up from you? Did they answer your question?
Definitely. A lot of good places to start. I am graduating in May, so about to start that search. So thank you.
Excellent. So we do have one other question that was directly messaged to me, and this one is targeted to Izzy and Jessie, who are both MPAs. And the question is specifically, how has, what made you decide on an MPA versus another degree such as an MPP, and how has that influenced your career growth? Izzy, if you want to start.
Yeah, so I did consider the MPP. I was looking at a lot of the comments and I saw students from the MPP program, but for me, I did look at the different schools and the different resources, what networks they were connected to. And so when I looked at the different schools and, again, living in New York City, where I wanted to be, Baruch College was the one that stood out to me. And so they have an administration, it was an MPA. And so I thought, okay, well, this is an MPA. I like the fact that it's, administration, and then you can specialize, right? So I wasn't too sure exactly. I knew it was policy, but I wasn't too sure, like maybe I want to do something else. Maybe I want to learn about something else. So the fact that it was kind of general, and then you can specialize in the courses in the electives, or what you wanted to specialize, and that gave me pretty much everything I wanted from a degree. So that's why I thought this was the school I wanted, this is what they're offering, and these are the options that they're giving me, plus all the networks that they have with the city. So it just made sense for me to go that route.
Jessie, any MPA regrets or
no MPA regrets, but I feel like Izzy was smarter about it than I was. So what I did right and what I would have done differently. I am really glad that I went for an MPA over an MPP, but I know plenty of people who have done MPPs and been super happy with them as well. The reason why I actually definitely was doing the cost benefit on both of those degrees. The reason why I eventually decided to go with the MPA is because it felt like to me that the MPP really prepares you extremely well with a lot of hard skills, like quantitative skills, which is very, very valuable and important. But I also wanted the soft skills because my experience at that point had taught me that the soft skills really are the hard skills, or at least they were for me. And so I wanted both the balance of the soft skills of management and the hard skills of management. And I thought that the MPA degree program did that really well. So, not just being able to do the best analysis possible, but then getting people to come together around that analysis and actually get good work done. That's what I needed. So I got both of those things from the MPA. The thing I didn't do very well, and this is a cautionary tale, is think really through where I'm probably going to end up looking for work after my MPA program, because I ended up doing my MPA at Syracuse University, the Maxwell School in upstate New York, which is a great program, and I super recommend it, especially if you're looking for a job in New York or DC. If you are going to move to the San Francisco Bay Area, I think you should go to the Goldman School and get an MPP. The network really is a lot of the reason that you go to and get a master's program and take 1 to 2 years out of your life and not work. So you really want to make sure that you're getting the right network. Otherwise, you could be like me and start from zero when you get to your new town. So that's my cautionary tale.
All right, just a quick, another question here. Do our panelists have rural experience or in rural jurisdictions, and how do they differ from urban settings?
I don't have any experience in rural.
So I'm going to shamelessly steal from one of my colleagues. So I work kind of hand in glove with someone who moved here from a rural part of Minnesota to take a job with the test and trace for, because he had operational experience running mobile clinics, because that is a predominant or a more common form of healthcare in rural settings where distance is really an issue and access to care. And so I don't have rural, but I'm going to paraphrase what he tells me all the time, which is the key difference that he always sees is who's in charge. When you're in an urban area, at least in my experience, and I know it differs agency by agency, and I think you're going to shake your head when I say, the city has a lot more control in the day-to-day outcome than the state. Because in large jurisdictions, the city has a longer history, has been there a long time, is maybe was built up at the same time that the state institutions, and because of history and case law and just a million reasons, the city is going to have a lot more control. So if you're more interested in having a direct service impact or working with people doing direct service or doing direct service yourself, the city might make more sense. Whereas in a rural setting, looking to the county or state government, really the state government, you're going to see more of that happening.
So not a ton of direct rural experience. This, I guess it's City Hall fellows for a reason, not village or town hall fellows. But I did see a hand raised. I think it was from Doug. Doug, we do want to give you an opportunity to ask your question if it hasn't been asked already. You want to just say what you typed out loud here?
Yeah, sure. I just typed it actually, but sorry, I came to the panel a bit late. I'm a second-year MPP at the Ford School at the University of Michigan, and I'm very interested in housing and economic development, and I'm looking to just grow my network out there and actually be able to move to the West Coast and find a job there. And I come from Chicago, and I'm currently in Ann Arbor, so I'm wondering if you have any advice for those looking to relocate, from across the country, essentially. And yeah, so something, yeah, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, I've got an org for you, Doug. You should look into networking with folks that are associated with the Municipal Management Association of Southern California. They have a lot of events and networking opportunities, and I think their membership is super affordable, and that is a really good way to break into Southern California.
Thank you.
Our East Coast panelists may not have as much advice about moving to the West Coast, so that's totally understandable. Do we
Dennis,
have?
can I just throw one thing in here to Jesse's point? Less, not for West Coast, but if you find yourself in a similar position as Doug and interested in housing, but happen to be more interested on the East Coast, just a key difference that I've experienced that in how jurisdictions handle things. We have a lot more historical public housing authorities. So if you're interested in housing, look to your local housing authorities. New York City, I think we have on the order of 360,000 apartments that are directly managed by the city, and another 250,000 that are through Section 8. So there are large scale networks that exist on the East Coast that are directly managed that don't really, for historical reasons, exist on the West Coast. And it's an interesting way to get into kind of direct service and housing.
All right. So I think with that, we just have 6 minutes left, and we want to be punctual and end on time. So I will throw out one last question for the panelists. And that is, are there any causes or organizations that resonate with you or that you are particularly involved with that you want to plug or promote with the audience that we have here? And Izzy, I would ask you to start.
Well, I guess I can say what I'm involved with right now is the mayor's task force on racial inclusion and equity. So the cool thing about that was, well, it pretty much started at the task force didn't have a budget. It was just a bunch of volunteers from the City Hall and different agencies. But the cool thing is that now there's a budget. It's going to be there for the next administration. So that's really cool, you know, thinking about COVID and equity and, you know, different matters within the city. One of the frameworks that they are trying to implement is results-based accountability. So that's really cool. But then I feel as a resource, I mean, NYC open data, or even for probably any state, but for NYC open data, if you want to just learn more about agencies and what they're doing and, you know, look at their metrics, that's just a really cool resource. And again, it could be for state, for the city, if you're really interested in NYC. It's a lot of good info on everything. So if you want to move to the East Coast, or New York City specifically, I would say that that's a good place to look at.
Jacob, a cause or organization that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, two quick things. I'm actually going to brag about Izzy now. I didn't realize you were with the Task Force on Racial Inclusion and Equity. Really cool to hear that, because actually one of the central to our methodology about how we deploy mobile testing, mobile vaccination resources is a lot of the early work y'all did about identifying those communities that had those significant impacts from Surge 1 and historic inequities in healthcare infrastructure. So like that is a foundational data set that underlies how we use those resources today. So cool, thank you. I use your work every single day and shamelessly steal it. But in terms of causes, you know, I would just say any kind of nonprofit journalism, ProPublica in particular, do really amazing work to pressure test government at every level, every single day. And a lot of times cool things that we get to work on come from like local stories that bubble up, and then you realize there's a gap somewhere, and then we get to go do an interesting thing, solving a problem. So that's something just worth paying attention to.
Jessie, lastly.
Gosh, there's just like so many good causes out there. I love the plugs for data though. That's close to my heart. I think, you know, hug a healthcare worker if they let you, if they're not worried about Delta or something like that. But yeah, they're really doing incredible work right now. And my own personal plug is, you know, there's so many organizations right now that are doing that type of like incredible labor during the pandemic. So most of my extra income is going to like Alameda County Food Bank, things like that. So yeah, that's just it. Everybody who's really affected by the pandemic, I think, being there for them in whatever way.
All very topical kind of causes that have thankfully seen increased attention recently. So thank you, panelists. I think we're right at time here. Really appreciate everybody's participation and time, especially in the evening here. Michael, with that, are there any closing thoughts you have or anything you want to do to close out the session?
Yes, just wanted to echo saying thank you to each of our panelists and to Dennis for doing a great job this evening, and also thank all of you all for participating today and asking excellent questions. As mentioned, we are going to be sending out a recording and a survey, so please fill that out if you can. And one final plug, we are tentatively planning another event in late October. That's going to be more of a webinar style presentation on some things to keep in mind about applying to local government jobs. So please be on the lookout for that, and we'll hope you'll join us for that as well. So with that, I think we can wrap up, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.